Hey everyone, this is Mike Ginnitti from Spotrac with a special edition of the Spotrac podcast breaking down AJ Brown's current contract with the Eagles that is currently in vogue with potential trade rumors and obviously the need to discuss the fluidity, the flexibility, and the long-term existence of these numbers. So because it's the Eagles, there's plenty of complications ensuing here. So for those of you watching on YouTube, which is definitely the easiest way for you to get this experience, I do have the Brown contract brought up on the Spotrac website. We're going to go through various tabs, various iterations of this, but I'm going to try to give you the clearest path towards what the Eagles are dealing with over the course of the next few months, and then how that changes this coming summer, which could drastically affect their decision making really for the entire offseason of 2026, assuming, of course, that Philadelphia has at least some interest in moving on from Brown before the start of the 2026 season. The current contract, you'll see here highlighted a 2026 situation. It's a low cap hit. This is because of what we're about to get into, which is minimum base salaries all the way down this contract and have been really for the existence of Brown's tenure in Philadelphia. And spoiler, every Philadelphia Eagles contract on the books currently. This is how they operate. They give them a signing bonus. They drop the minimum salaries, and everything else is built into options. So what you're looking at here is collective combined option bonus cap hits. If you flip this to cash, you'll see exactly what that looks like from a cash perspective. So AJ Brown is not making 1.3 million this year. He's making a $1.3 million base salary with a significantly higher option bonus that needs to be exercised by week one. This is a pretty important detail here. This is pretty standard. Generally, how this works is that second year option bonus, this guy has a much more aggressive exercise date. 5 league days, 10 league days, sometimes 20 league days. Sometime in the month of March, player and agent want to know that this thing's been exercised because really it's just a formality. Okay. It's essentially a second signing bonus. Let's get it on the books. Let's get it exercised. Let's not deal with it. For the most part, relationships are still very, very positive 1 year into this contract. Well, now we're in year 3 of this one. Okay. And there's a pattern of option bonuses here. All of these future option bonuses, the Eagles will have until week 1 to fully exercise them. That doesn't mean they're not on the books yet. It just means we don't have to essentially establish this as guaranteed money until really week 1 when we exercise the option specifically, which then keeps this thing spread out for cap purposes over your 5-year span. If they were to decline that option bonus, and I'll go back here, let's say the Eagles say, no, we're not going to exercise this. This is already a guaranteed bonus, as you can see here. Okay. All of 2026 fully guaranteed last March. This would simply combine with this to become a $29 million base salary. Guaranteed still, but the Eagles would take all of that salary cap in 2026 versus how it's currently being split up, which is minimal here, 5-year stretch on that one. So that's the nuts and bolts of how this is laid out on its surface, right? And that's, of course, if everything is hunky-dory peachy, which we're kind of assuming here that it's not. So that's the pattern that we've been having if we go down to the previous contract here, right? 2023 had an option bonus. 2024 had an option bonus that got converted into this new contract, into that signing bonus, which you'll see in this column here. Now we've got a 2026 option bonus. We had a 2025 option bonus, and we go from there. Every year it's a decision, and every year going forward, it's a week 1 at the latest decision. They can exercise it tomorrow, by the first league day if they'd like to. But the other point to make here is this is not necessarily like a roster bonus, whereas there's a certain date on the books, many of them 3rd league day, 5th league day, etc. Once that guarantee vest hits, once it's paid essentially, it belongs with that team. This is a different scenario, okay? This is simply the Philadelphia Eagles saying, okay, we acknowledge this option. We're essentially acknowledging the fact that we've opened up 2031 as a viable year for us to spread out this 5 years of proration. But it doesn't mean that when the Eagles exercise this option, they are paying AJ Brown that money. It's a very different scenario. It's not a roster bonus. It's not like that. Okay. This 29 million combined here gets paid out biweekly as normal salary to AJ Brown, as if it were base salary. Now, there are certain contract stipulations where that changes and there's certain payment schedules, but it's not a lump bonus. Okay. And for the record, while we're getting that on the books, you're going to hear about 5-6 dozen salary cap conversions or restructures around the next couple of months. Most of those do not offer the player a lump sum payment. Sometimes it happens, but most of the time it's just an accounting trick that moves the cap down the road, like we're talking about here, but the payment schedule stays intact. It's still just a normal paycheck through a 18-week league schedule, and the player really doesn't see any difference outside of the fact that his cap hit has changed. Okay. So that's a big part of this. The Eagles exercising this option does not tie them to this salary in 2026 necessarily, which means they can exercise this thing on March 11th, keep the proration over the 5 years, keep this current cap hit intact, and move forward with their offseason, still with the idea, the mindset of trading AJ Brown, which leads us to the next column, which is dead cap. I know there's a lot of people that are super new to this or just haven't taken time to understand it, which, by the way, I don't blame you. This stuff's one of the most complicated accounting financial structures in all of professional sports. And many people to this day refuse to understand it because it's kind of crazy, and it is kind of crazy. This idea that you can push things down the line and delay processes and prorate bonuses and all these things. It's very unique to the NFL. So you're coming to this page, you're seeing this number right here, which is an astronomical 72.5 million. This is the overall total amount of dead cap that exists with AJ Brown right now. What do I mean by that? It means there's been a signing bonus that has stretched over 5 years. That's this and this. There was a previous signing bonus here that stretched over 5 years. That's why these three numbers are inflated from these two numbers. Any of that, okay, 1, 2, and 3 is dead cap. It's a bonus that's been paid, but the Eagles have not yet accounted for this salary cap. That's dead cap. The same thing goes with these option bonuses. There was an option bonus in 2023 that I showed you over 5 years. There's an option bonus in 2025 over 5 years. Any of the cap from that bonus proration that has not been accounted for is dead cap. Okay. And because those bonuses have all been paid already, that's Eagles dead cap no matter what. There's no way to change that. Okay. They simply have to take their medicine with that. This 72.5 also includes any future fully guaranteed salary, which includes this right here. That's the 29 million. So for those of you seeing the numbers that I posted this morning, which is 45 and change of traded dead cap for AJ Brown, and then you're coming here and seeing 72.5, the gap that's happening here is this 29 million, which is the base salary plus the option bonus in 2026, which has not been paid yet and would transfer to a new team if AJ Brown is traded before week 1 of the NFL season. Okay. So that's the variations between that. And where you can really see that breaking down is by clicking on this little guy here, which pops this little thing up, which I think is pretty handy to a lot of people, myself included. I use it on a daily basis with many players. Here's the breakdown. Okay. And we'll get into some of this here in a second, but the 72.5 million only exists if the Eagles outright release AJ Brown before June 1st, something that is not going to happen for a lot of reasons. Okay. One of them being 72.5 million of dead cap hitting their books this year. Here's the number that I referenced this morning on social media and in the article. Okay. 43.5 million worth of dead cap exists from a trade perspective, which is all of the signing bonus and all of the paid option bonuses that have not yet hit the salary cap. All right. It does not include the $29 million of guaranteed salary for 2026, which has not been paid yet because that is assumed to be moved in the trade. So still a gigantic number, but not $72.5 million. So hopefully that clears up that part of it. These numbers right here is what I referenced this morning, what I referenced in the offseason article for the Eagles. Okay. Any trade that happens before June 1st, and remember, there's no designation for a trade. You can't say you're going to trade a player and then wait to trade him until June 1st and get the same kind of benefits. It's not like a designation for the release. Okay. You actually have to process the trade after June 1st to allow for the split that you see here. So it's either they're going to take their lump and take their medicine and take on the fourth largest dead cap hit in the history of football and lose $20 million of cap space in doing so in order to acquire 2026 draft picks and whatever else comes with that. Or they can wait till after June 1st. And then this is how that $43.5 million splits up. They would take $16.3 million this year. They would take another $27.1 million in 2027. And they would actually free up a little over $7 million of cap space, but not until June. Okay. And obviously with the draft being well before that, we wouldn't be including any 2026 draft picks as compensation within that trade. So you'd be thinking about getting players back, getting 2027 draft picks, of course, but nothing to do with the current 2026 draft. So there's pros and cons, there's positives and negatives. I'm not going to sit here and say this is impossible, okay? Because every single offseason for the past 5 years or so, we've seen historic dead cap hits being taken on, including this past year with Derek Carr and the New Orleans Saints as one of the biggest ones. Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, okay? Year to year. In fact, the Eagles have a history with this going back to Carson Wentz, which I think was about a $34 million dead cap hit seemingly forever ago. So it would be unprecedented. It would be historic, but it's not completely out of bounds to say that this is not going to happen. Again, none of us really know what's happening within that locker room, what's happening with that relationship. There's a lot of productivity from AJ Brown. I'm just here to tell you what the numbers look like from a overall standpoint. Okay. So what happens if he stays in 2026? Well, that's the $1 million question here. Okay. Because what's going to happen is this option bonus is going to be exercised, which means this divided by 5 gets added over the next four years and change for this contract, which means that all of these numbers here will increase. Now, you're talking about a situation that's going to add about $20 million of dead cap here total. Okay. So there's still going to be a very realistic out after 2026, which is why this line of demarcation has been here since the inception of this contract. Yes, there will be an increase in salary guarantee, but it's minimal. Okay. A $4 million salary guarantee, as you see here, which will happen on March 13th, is basically a buyout, and for the lack of better term, in the NFL. And we're seeing this quite a bit. A really small, seemingly insignificant amount of guaranteed money on a contract year that probably isn't going to happen in most cases, but allows the player to get a little bit extra on the way out the door. Almost always this comes with offset language, which means that if AJ Brown goes and picks up a new contract elsewhere, let's just say the Patriots for fun, okay, and if it's not a minimum contract, let's say he signs for 1 for 5 with bonuses that can take it to 10. If he makes more than $4 million, the Eagles will owe him $0 at the end of the day. And that cap that they take, that $4 million of dead cap here, would be credited back to them in 2028 after all is said and done through the 2027 season. Okay. So it's a bit of a gamesmanship happening here, a little bit of chess instead of checkers with some of these smaller future guarantees. But this right here, especially in the landscape of Eagles financials, is not scaring anybody off from assuming that 2027, this time next year, is a much healthier time to move on from AJ Brown. I'm not saying it's not going to happen this year. Again, we're making assumptions about the relationship and having seen some altercations on the sideline and things like that. But contractually, this is kind of your go-to right here. Okay. This is what it looks like if it happens in March or April or May. This is what it looks like if it happens over the summer. And that's all I can tell you here for 2026. Once the option is exercised, we will update the dead cap accordingly down here. These numbers will change somewhat drastically, and there'll be a whole new conversation to have in 2027. But there won't be an overage of dead cap that will take moving on from Brown after 2026 anywhere near out of the conversation. So tough right now, really tough before June 1st, but not impossible in any sense. If I had to give you my Hail Mary prediction, and again, I'm assuming some things, I think he stays on the Eagles in 2026. And there are some things that happen around him to maybe improve the culture and the climate. And then, not to have a hot take here, but we're talking about both an A.J. Brown contract and a Jalen Hurts contract with some issues in 2027 that could be resolved with trades, with releases, with renegotiations if it gets to that point in time as well. So I think cooler heads prevail. Other changes are made, and this contract stays on the books as it should be based on the structure of it for one more season, and then we will wait and see. So that's the nuts and bolts of dead cap, A.J. Brown, and the Philadelphia Eagles. Thanks for listening, and hit subscribe if this is your first time checking us out. And we'll be back soon with another edition of the Spotrac podcast.